this leads us into our last story. Uh, Something a little bit out of norm for us. We're not going to be talking about NFL, but future NFLers, future NFL football players, so to speak. Nick, why don't you describe our next segment for us?
Sure. So college football is winding down, and obviously draft season isn't too far away. And a lot of teams are already out of it, are already looking ahead to the draft and seeing what potential prospects there are. And we being the nice content creators we are, we decided to help the fans out and do our own part there a little bit too. So you and I both looked at the college football playoff semifinals this past weekend, and we looked at the four most notable prospects from these games, and we looked at how they played and what they did, and we decided to grade each one of them. And in the spirit of them being in college, we decided to give them letter grades.
Yeah.
So without further ado, do you want to give us the first one?
All right. Our first future NFL product we graded was Desmond Ridder, quarterback from Cincinnati, receiving a grade of a D minus.
So
Why do you need to explain this to us?
yeah, so Ritter came into this game. He was kind of like a dark horse guy to maybe going like the top 10, top five. Some guys had him maybe even being a potential top two or top three, first quarterback off the board. And I kind of get it because you watched him, right? And he looked big, tall, strong, right? Looked pretty good athlete, ran pretty well. And he had a nice release, good spiral. He, just looked the part. But when you watch him play, the thing that blew my mind was how simple the game plan was for Cincinnati. They didn't try and stretch the field against Alabama. The commentators brought it up probably a dozen times. Alabama's weak with injuries in the secondary, and Desmond Ridder and that Cincinnati offense didn't attack him at all. Look, if you got a senior quarterback who supposedly potentially could be a first-round talent, top 10 talent, you got to be attacking down the field, man. Like, you got to cut it and rip it. You're playing Alabama. Have some aggressiveness to it. It was very odd, especially when they were down. I remember one moment when they were down 3 touchdowns in the fourth quarter, and it was still early enough in the fourth quarter where maybe they could make a move. And I think they ran the ball 3 straight plays. It's
Yeah.
like, look, if you got a senior quarterback, like what are you doing? Let him rip it. Throw the ball down the field. Try and make some plays. I just thought it was either a coaching disaster by Cincinnati, which I don't think so. I think that's a good staff, or there's something up with Desmond Ridder. Like, either maybe he's just not that good. What are your thoughts?
Um, a few things jump off the paper at me. Okay, 17 of 32. So 53% completion percentage. Not really great. Only 144 yards. So not really throwing the ball down the field. Average of 4.5 yards per pass. 0 touchdowns. 0 interceptions. So good for 0 interceptions. Didn't completely fail, so maybe got you a D instead of an F. He gets sacked 6 times. I know that's not entirely on him, facing a stout Alabama defense with maybe not the best offensive line, but taking 6 sacks is tough. And another thing that really, really jumps off the page for me, okay? I don't know necessarily the metrics of ESPN's QB rating, not QBR, but just their rating. But let's go through the last 4 seasons for Ridder. In 2018, he averaged 146 rating. 2019, he averaged 123. 2020, he averaged 153. 2021, he averaged 159. This game, he had a 90 rating. Well below his average. I just like you said, maybe he's not as good as Build. Maybe playing in a Gang of 5 division that like Cincinnati's in really has hindered them. And does this give teams like Cincinnati a bad taste in their mouth, like performing this poorly, making it look like they don't deserve to play in the playoffs?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's when you look at what Ritter did, it just again, I think the fact that they didn't even trust him to throw the ball down the field, and he put up those good numbers earlier in the season against inferior competition. Alabama is essentially an NFL defense, but we've seen top quarterback prospects have big games against Alabama. Joe Burrow, Trevor Lawrence, right? They did. Deshaun Watson. Even Justin Fields in the national championship game last year scored 35 points. Wasn't perfect, but had to move the ball a lot. Very, very productive, very aggressive. I think the fact that they didn't cut it loose and be aggressive with Ridder, it just shows me something. I think he's going to climb draft boards because he looks the part. But I think this guy, I know it's early. I don't think a team should use a first round pick on him. I think it potentially has bust potential as if he climbs up the charts into the first round. I thought he really hurt his draft stock, at least in my mind, with his performance against Alabama.
I agree with you. But moving on to our next player, let's go to an Alabama guy. Um, Next up, we have Evan Neal, offensive line of Alabama, receiving a much more respectable B. Why don't you break this one down for us?
Yes. So Evan Neal is going to be a top 10 pick. He's probably the best offensive lineman in the draft. He is a road grader as a runner and a good athlete, pass protection, left tackle in Alabama's offense, which throws the ball a lot, does a lot of different things. He's going to be a top 10 pick. He had a nice game. Alabama ran for over 200 yards just when Brian Robinson, the running back alone. I think they actually ran over 300 yards total for the game. And Evan Neal had a really nice day. The reason this is only a B is because he was playing Cincinnati. So good on you, Evan Neal. You had a good game and dominated second-rate competition. So you didn't hurt your draft stock, but you weren't going to – the only way you were going to hurt is if you played bad, kind of like Ridder. You didn't. You did a good job. You won the game. You had a nice day. So I think your draft stock stays well. Top 10 guy, Evan Neal. But I don't think I can give you a big boost and go, wow, you didn't really light it up for me because you were blocking Cincinnati defensive linemen.
Yeah, me not being able to grade offensive linemen as well as you being a former offensive lineman. A couple things, I see they ran for 1,000,000 yards, so obviously they did good in the run blocking department. They passed for a respectable almost 180 yards, 3 touchdowns. So it seemed like a pretty solid day passing when you have that many days or yards rushing. So it seems like he did well. Bryce Young only got sacked twice. I'm not sure if Evan Neal was a part of any of those. It probably wasn't him if I had to guess. But he just seems like a pretty solid player. A nice grab for someone in the first round if they would like to do so. Anything else on Neal?
No, let's move on to our third guy.
Our third guy is Michigan edge defender Aidan Hutchinson. So Hutchinson played Georgia. And Georgia had a pretty strong offense. Hutchinson's being billed as probably the first overall pick, possibly probably in the top 3 for sure. This season he's looked pretty strong throughout the year, but in this game he looked so I'd say. He didn't do anything too much to hurt himself, but we gave him a B- here. What did you think about his showing versus Georgia?
Yeah, so the grade I think for here, like we talked about, is more the context, like you said, where he's competing to be the number 1 overall pick. Him and Thibodeau are listed at the top of the big board going to this year's draft. Kayvon Thibodeau, defensive end for Oregon. So Hutchinson, he lines up out there. He's a big guy, long arms, tall, physical, big dude. He looks good, looks the part, does all the little, uses his hands well, good get off, wins a lot of one-on-one matchups. I thought he did all that really well, showed good awareness on the screen. I think had a nice tackle for loss. I think the thing with Hutchinson is if you're going to be a number 1 or number 2 overall pick, you need to be a legit level superstar playmaker. Like you need to do absurd things. You need to be a Myles Garrett. You need to be a Jadeveon Clowney. Like Jadeveon Clowney, I'm sure you remember again the bowl game against Michigan, right? Where he, beats the block, destroys the running back, picks up the ball with one hand in a big moment for South Carolina. Just absolutely unbelievable. Like if you're going to be a number 1 or number 2 overall pick in my mind, like those are the kind of moments you have to have.
I think that cemented Clowney's number 1 overall selection with a play like that. And Hutchinson, he didn't hurt his performance didn't hurt, but it didn't help either, you know what I mean? He got 4 tackles, no sacks or anything like that. Georgia's top tier O line, kind of kept the quarterback clean. And like you said, Thibodeau, at least in their game against Utah, they did lose, but he got 3 tackles the last game he played in, and he got a sack. So, like you said, he's playing against good talent in Utah, and we saw Utah. They're a very talented team, but he was able to get a sack against them. So, I mean, he at least showed out a little bit. Hutchinson didn't really wow, but he didn't do anything, I guess, to hurt himself.
Yeah, and you hit the nail on the head there a little bit. And we're going to talk about this with our next guy shortly. But for me, elite level defensive players in the NFL, prospects you're looking for, you're not it's a new NFL, right? The rules, favor the passing game, and the offense is 100%. You need playmakers on defense. You need guys who will get sacks, not just pressures, not just, get a little pressure on the quarterback. You need guys who will make the play. They'll drag him down, tip passes, get interceptions, big tackles for loss, force fumbles. Those are the guys you need. And Hutchinson, in the biggest game of his career, he didn't really do any of that. And there was a couple plays where I thought he had a chance to get to Stetson Bennett, Georgia's quarterback, and Bennett ran away from him. Stetson Bennett, love you, but you're not a world-class athlete. I thought Hutchinson, again, I don't think he really hurt himself. It's not like he's going to fall out of the top 5 or anything, but he didn't look like, whoa, this guy's a number 1 overall pick kind of guy. Looked like, maybe a top 5 kind of guy based on that one game.
Yes, but like we said, leading us to our last pick, a Georgia player who we liked very, very much, Nakobe Dean, linebacker from Georgia, A+ grade. I got a couple things on this. Why don't you start us off, though?
Yeah, so I'll go first. So I just talked about defense is all about playmakers, right? And Nakobe Dean, he had a sideline-to-sideline tackle for loss where he was covering a running back on the left sideline. Running back went in motion. They threw him like a fly screen on the run, a swing screen kind of deal. He tracked all the way sideline to sideline, tackle for loss. Unbelievable. That's what you want as an athlete. He had a sack. He saw an opening. He blitzed the quarterback, got him down easily. Perfect. He fought off a block to get a forced fumble, right? I think when I look at that, that's what I want from a linebacker in today's NFL. I want a guy, I don't think he's Micah Parsons, but I want a guy like Darius Leonard, right? A guy who'll punch the ball out, a guy who'll fly to the football, a guy who will make plays. Like, gone are the days where you want a linebacker who will fill the gap and make a tackle for a 2-yard gain. That's not the NFL anymore. You need guys who will tip passes, get sacks, tackles for loss, sideline to sideline, make plays. And I think Nakobe Dean showed that out big time against the Michigan offense. Remember, Michigan had a field day against Ohio State, which has NFL talent on defense. The fact that Nakobe Dean was able to go out there and fly around really elevated his draft stock. I think this guy's going to move higher and higher up the draft boards. I know a lot of people have comped him to Patrick Queen. I like him a lot with Darius Leonard. I think he doesn't have that same maniac mentality that Leonard does, but his sideline to sideline speed and hustle and playmaking ability, I think really reminds me of him. I think whoever picks him up in the draft next year is going to get a heck of a player.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. Things that you touched on that I agreed with. Like we said, he produced this game. 7 tackles, a sack, forced fumble. He was all over the field, tackling everybody, gets a sack, gets the big plays, a forced fumble, the sack. Really, really goes out there. And I think of all the guys on this list, is the only one where his performance in the game helps his draft stock tremendously. He performed. And like you said, Michigan's no slouch. Michigan was a very good team. Unlike Cincinnati, we're not sure exactly how good they were. Michigan played a lot of tough teams. Michigan beat a good Ohio State team. And he did good against a very good team. So I think this really, really helped his draft stock. And I'm looking forward to see what we can see from Nakobe in the future.